We're about to dive into an incredible story. It's a story of discovery, but it's one that was born from rejection.
Just think about that for a second. She was denied the career she wanted because she was a woman. So what did she do? She went and studied dead children and ended up discovering a disease that has since saved thousands of lives. It just shows you how being shut out of one door can lead to completely blowing the walls off an entire field of medicine.
All right, I want you to picture this. It's 1935, New York City. We're in the basement morgue of Baby's Hospital. You can just feel the cold, right? The air, it's thick with the smell of formaldehyde, maybe some stale tobacco smoke. And right here, surrounded by the bodies of children, is Dr. Dorothy Andersen. And she's about to unravel a medical mystery that is devastating families all across the country.
So back then, doctors thought they knew what was killing these kids. They had a diagnosis: celiac disease. It was kind of this catch-all term for any child who couldn't digest food and just wasn't growing. The problem was, the treatments, special diets and things, they almost never worked. The children just kept wasting away, often dying before they were even 3 years old.
But here's the thing. Dr. Andersen, she looked at these children and she saw that the facts just didn't add up. The textbook said one thing, but her own eyes told her another. These kids, they had ravenous appetites, had these skeletal little bodies, but their bellies were all swollen and distended. And then there was the biggest clue of all, the one that completely broke from the textbook definition: their lungs. They were always clogged with this thick, sticky mucus. And that was something celiac disease just never, ever caused.
So who was this person questioning the medical consensus? Well, her name was Dorothy Andersen, and she was brilliant, ambitious, and, let's be honest, a total outsider. She actually wanted to be a surgeon, but the medical world of the 1930s, well, it wasn't having it. Surgery was for men, so she was pushed into pathology. She was this rugged individualist famous for wearing hiking boots around the hospital and chain-smoking right through her autopsies. She was literally relegated to the basement, but she was absolutely determined to find the truth. And it was that sheer determination that led her to one specific autopsy, an autopsy that would change, well, everything. You can just picture her, standing over the small body of a 3-year-old girl, looking right past that easy diagnosis on the chart, searching for the real reason this child had died. So she begins the procedure. She opens the abdomen, and there it is, the pancreas. And what she saw must have just stopped her in her tracks. Because it shouldn't have looked like this. Not at all. You see, a healthy pancreas is supposed to be soft. This one, it was hard, like a rock. It was all fibrous and just riddled with cysts and scar tissue. And its ducts, these tiny little tubes that are supposed to deliver life-giving digestive enzymes to the intestine, they were completely blocked. This organ was, for all intents and purposes, destroyed. And that's when it all clicked. This wasn't celiac disease. It wasn't even close. This child, and so many others just like her, had starved to death. Not because they weren't getting enough food, but because their bodies were physically incapable of absorbing a single nutrient from the food they ate. Their internal machinery was completely broken. And this wasn't just some fluke, a one-off discovery. Andersen went back. She pulled the files of almost 50 other children who had all died with that same celiac disease diagnosis. She must have spent nights in those archives, and she found it again and again and again. The same scarred pancreas, the same mucus-filled lungs. She hadn't just found an anomaly. She'd found a pattern. She'd found a killer that had been hiding in plain sight for years.
So, by piecing together this pattern, Dr. Andersen was doing something huge. She was on the verge of defining an entirely new disease, one that had been tragically misunderstood for decades.
And she gave it a name that came directly from what she saw under the microscope: cystic fibrosis of the pancreas. It makes sense, right? Cystic for the cysts she saw, and fibrosis for all that scar tissue. It was a precise, scientific description for a disease that was, until that moment, unmapped, unknown, and incredibly deadly.
So you might be asking, okay, so she gave it a new name. Why does that matter so much?
And it's a great question. It mattered because a wrong diagnosis always leads to the wrong treatment. For years, doctors were fighting the wrong enemy. They were prescribing these special diets that did absolutely nothing. By identifying the true enemy, a faulty pancreas, Andersen basically threw open the door for developing treatments that could actually work. Naming the disease wasn't just about labeling it, it was the very first step to saving lives.
But Dr. Andersen's work didn't stop in the morgue. I mean, that's where the discovery happened, but she knew she had to take it further. She had to find a way to diagnose these children before they ended up on her autopsy table. She had to find a way to save the living.
And she was relentless. In 1938, she published her landmark paper, turning the medical world on its head. Then, she developed the very first diagnostic test. Now, it was invasive, but it worked. But her most famous breakthrough? That came during a brutal New York heat wave in 1948. She noticed that her patients with this disease were collapsing from heat exhaustion, way more than other kids. She dug into why, and she discovered something incredible. They were losing massive amounts of salt in their sweat. And that observation led directly to the simple, non-invasive sweat test, which, believe it or not, is still the gold standard for diagnosing cystic fibrosis today.
So you see, her work, it wasn't just a discovery. It was a revolution. And its legacy, well, it continues to save and extend lives every single day. Just look at these numbers. It's staggering. Before Dr. Andersen's work, a child diagnosed with this disease was lucky to see their third birthday. 3 years old. Today, because of the foundation she laid, people with cystic fibrosis are living well into their 50s and even beyond. That is the power of getting the diagnosis right.
I mean, her list of firsts is just incredible. She didn't just find a new disease. She mapped its pathology, she created the first criteria to diagnose it, she developed the first tests, and she even helped create the first enzyme therapies. She pretty much built the entire field of CF care from the ground up.
And this quote, it just says it all, doesn't it? Celiac disease had become what's known as a wastebasket diagnosis. It was just a label doctors slapped on something they didn't really understand. Dr. Andersen refused to accept that. When the textbooks said one thing, but her autopsies, the hard evidence in front of her, said something else, she trusted what she saw with her own 2 eyes.
You know, when you step back, her story is just this powerful reminder that some of the biggest breakthroughs come from people who've been pushed to the margins. She was denied the career she dreamed of simply because she was a woman.
She was literally relegated to the basement, and from that very basement, the place she was sent to be forgotten, she changed medicine forever.
The story of Dorothy Andersen proves that genius and courage can be found anywhere, often in the very people and places we tend to overlook. And it leaves you with a pretty big question, doesn't it? How many other revolutions in science and everywhere else are just waiting to be discovered in the basements we've forgotten?